Next panelist is Elizabeth Berry. Elizabeth is a CPA, again, from North Carolina. She's been doing it, runs in the family, second generation, family-owned firm and business. And so she's going to try and help us navigate through any type of CPA type questions, accounting questions that you may have as we're going through this journey together. I also want to preface by saying we understand that this is a very stressful time for everyone right now. There's a lot of unanswered things. It's all happened very quickly and very fast. And so please know that we're providing this outlet as a resource for you, hopefully to help answer some questions and really just be a source of information, but also a supportive encouragement for you to know that you're not alone. We're all here together, and we really want to try and help you with what we're doing through this journey. All right. We're going to start. And again, if you haven't muted yourself, please go ahead, and now is a great time to mute yourself. And then that way we can keep the video screen on the panelists that's actually speaking as they come up. So first of all, we're going to start with, if we would, I think, Miller, we had a really good question for you. And if you're comfortable, we're going to start with that. The first question is, does this qualify as an act of God for reimbursement, business loans, or inventory losses?
So from an insurance standpoint, first of all, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate being here. And from an insurance standpoint, every insurance policy has very specific language about what's covered and what's excluded. I've used the term act of God before, but that's not a specific language that's written into insurance policies. Most of the time it'll say natural disasters or something to that effect. So, an act of God is you're not gonna see that in there. What most business owners are referring to a lot with this question is the fact that they're having to shut down now. Business interruption coverage is a very big question that we've been getting. And again, each insurance policy is going to have specific language in their policy. Specifically, business interruption protects against losses sustained when you have to shut down or suspend operations. But those losses have to be sustained by direct physical damage caused by a covered peril. Now, a covered peril, those are listed on the insurance policy. Most of the time, those are going to be something like a fire or a natural disaster. But like I said, there are specific coverages that are included and specific coverages that are excluded. Having said that, the majority of policies, actually every policy that I've seen in North Carolina, there are specific exclusions for virus and bacteria. And that's been in place for years and years. It's nothing new. Now, having said that, the Department of Insurance in North Carolina, state and federal governments are continuing to assess this situation. There may be changes coming down the road, but as of right now, the best thing to do is read your insurance policy and look at that specific language when it comes to business interruption or loss of income. If you have a question, contact your insurance agent. I don't mean to be broad or just not answer the question, but right now the way the insurance policies read is that there is no coverage for this situation. Do you think that answers your question, Jennifer, at least to get started?
I think that does. If anyone has anything more specific to that, please go ahead and type that in as a comment, and then we can look at getting back to that, if that sounds fair. Thank you, Miller. Next, here's a question. For those of us who have an LLC, but do not cut ourselves a payroll check, but we do owner drawings instead, what are our options for getting some coverage for what we normally pull from our accountants each month? I'm going to unmute you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yes, I was just talking away. What I know about is there's not a whole lot. We have something that'll go through your tax return at the end of the year, but I haven't seen anything that says that we'll get money before that as self-employed. I'm an LLC as well. And so that's not a good answer, but I don't think there's a better answer. And, they're thinking about sending us some money, sending all adults some money. That's in the legislation that they're working on right now. That wasn't an answer, but it was lack of knowledge. Lack of them addressing it.
I think that's a fair answer.
And as a LLC, we don't pay in unemployment, so we don't get to take unemployment, so we can't go through the ESC to get those benefits. Now, if you are in an S Corp and you've been treating yourself as an employee, that's different, because then you're wearing two hats, but your employee hat works for the unemployment.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I apologize, I'm gonna try and switch my audio. It sounds like I might be breaking up. But the next one is, what is the state's capacity to assist with paying loans and helping with survival in their interim? How do we get them to intercede to help with leases and such? Any thoughts on that?
Hey, Jennifer, this is James. I would suggest reaching out to the legislature to let them know of this need. They are hearing from a lot of constituents, but they need to hear from small business owners. And so if you know people in the legislature, or if you know the legislature, the leaders of that, let's please reach out to them, call them. They're home, they're not in session right now, and go see them, because this is a major issue that they need to help with.
Here's another one, James, right along that line, is how will we know if the Secretary of Labor will be exempting employers of under 50? What should we reasonably expect in regards to that? And again, it's what should we, and this may not be a question that we can answer right now, but what should we be able to reasonably expect in regards to that? Be exempting employers of under 50?
You know, we're not real sure what they're going to do yet. The law just came out. The agencies have not probably even really had a good enough time to deal with it yet. As far as how they will deal with that going forward, their idea, the logic is for it to be broadly interpreted to help business owners. Whether or not they do that is yet to be seen. But so far, we don't have an idea yet, and there's no provisions to identify the regulations as to how they're going to interpret those.
And it's 25 or less, or 25 to 500. So the cutoff is 25, not 50.
This goes back to one we kind of answered, is about with the 1099 employees. How do they receive any type of assistance during this time, or do they? And then have any of you heard anything about what might be offered for sole proprietors during this time?
No to both, except, I mean, all I know is on your tax return at year end. So.
That's fair. What about the process of implications of declaring bankruptcy, like Chapter 7? We hope it doesn't come to this, but it's also at the worst possible time.
Well, once you file Chapter 7, you know, that's the liquidation bankruptcy section, and you basically walk away. Just so you know, most of the time if you sell a restaurant, there's not any, you don't get much value out of it. So there probably won't be any money to pay your creditors. James, you want to add some in there? That was a brief.
Yeah, and that's great. That's good advice. And every business, you know, is of the business really goes into being what other debt there may be in your life, if it's personal or if it's all business. You really need to go to see a bankruptcy attorney to roll that out to them, because there's just a lot of information that they would need to really make that answer, or give that question a good answer. And that may be something that you have to do in the interim, or it may be that that doesn't apply at all, but that they're the ones that really can give you that advice the best, because it's so specific.
Since the FMLA law has potentially different requirements for employers under 25 and under 50, how is that number calculated? Can we terminate most of our workforce in order to avoid the new law's most dire consequences? Did that one come through okay?
You broke up in there.
Okay. Since the new FMLA law has potentially different requirements for employers under 25 and under 50, how is the number of employees calculated? Can we terminate most of our workforce? Can we terminate most of our workforce in order to avoid this new law's most dire consequences?
And again, it's 25 and 500. I think we just dropped to 0 on that question. Usually part-time equivalents are 20 hours. So, or full-time equivalents are 20 hours, and 2 of those equal a full-time person.
And I think the way the new law is written is that you can terminate, you can lay off, or you can fire your employees now, and they can go get unemployment benefits as soon as they can get within the system. And that's no impact to you as the employer.
Right, and that's a North Carolina law that they've just come out with. I think you're just looking at the top of it. The federal is much more expensive because you have to pay some wages and some sick time up front and then get reimbursed next quarter. And so that means you have to have the cash now because you're paying the taxes on it, everything until, and then you get a credit on your tax return on your 941.
One of the other things I noticed in the North Carolina law was that the employers' unemployment accounts will not be hit because of this if it's related to the coronavirus.
And they also say make sure you tag it.
Right.
Make it clear.
Yeah. If you've got a reduction of business because of what's going on, people can't come to you, or you can't serve, or you can't service your customers or your clients, then that would be probably related to the coronavirus. But you need to tag it. Make sure they know that. And one of the benefits is that your employees can jump right up into the system. They're supposed to make it easier. I have not heard yet how that's working, but I did hear that. I can't remember the numbers I heard the other day, but it is dramatically higher compared to normal right now.
I know I listened to Cooper say something yesterday, and they were talking about the system is set up to handle 3,000 people a week. And the other day, between a day and a half, they had 18,000. And so it overloaded their system, and they are quickly working on it. But it's still not going to, I mean, it's only going to be so fast.
I think you're seeing in North Carolina some privately held but larger employers making that call really quickly. I haven't spoken with them yet, but my guess is the reason they're doing that is to go ahead and get their employees as close to the front of that line as they can. As much as you would hate to lose some employees, that may be the best way to help take care of them.
So if I have an S Corp and I stop paying myself, can I personally apply for unemployment?
If you have been paying yourself and treating yourself as an employee just like your other guys, then yes, you can. You can apply for unemployment. It's the same procedure as if you were not an owner too. But when you're have an S Corp and work in it too, you actually have 2 hats. So you have the owner hat and then you have the employee hat. And so you get the benefits of the employee too.
Right. I'm trying to move to get a better connection. Businesses with under 25 employees not being required to restore an employee to their position, meaning small businesses with less than 25 employees are not required to restore an employee to their position following leave taken under the Family Emergency Medical Leave Expansion Act. Is that small business still required to offer the paid leave, but just not required to restore the employee to their position?
From what I've been reading, they do have to put them back where they were. And if that position is no longer there, then they have to find one that's close to it, and they have to give it a year so that if in that year that position comes up, they have to offer it to the person who's not there.
We closed on March 16th, but I'm paying my employees through the end of March. can they apply for unemployment now, or do they have to wait until April 1st? Kristy, I think, I'm not sure if you're on or able to answer.
No, I am on. My understanding is with the new executive order that they do not have to wait. They do not have to wait now because of the new executive order.
Get through all the questions here. And just FYI, a question just came in about alcohol, no consumption on outdoor patios. That is correct. The state did come in this morning and issue a update to their cancellation, the closure of restaurants, to let people know that you cannot have patio seating outside and serve the general public beverages. So they have said that it is completely against the ordinance, and that if you do it, it's a misdemeanor. And they've been instructed to, Raleigh actually went around this morning and told businesses they've been instructed to revoke alcohol permits if that's happening. Another question is, do I need to formalize anything for my employees for them to file for unemployment, notice of termination, notice of business closing?
I would say if you're going to do that, give them notice and say the reason you're doing that is because there's a reduction of work. There's a reduction of the need for that job, and that way they can take that to the Employment Security Commission to make their application for unemployment, and they have that in writing.
And actually, there was something written that said how to apply. One of the things that they need is details from their employer about separation, vacation, or any severance that they get. So they do need that information. They need that, and then they need their Social Security number, and they need their bank information if they want it directly into that, and then they need their work history, and then why even if their hours have been reduced, they do not, they need to know why, what their hours were. So that's the list that they had on what I read about what they would need.
Okay. Next one is the reimbursement for paid sick leave is applied as a credit to the employer portion of SS taxes. Has there been any indication of how that will actually work? Is there currently any apparatus for taking credits on the federal 940, 941?
No, no, there's not a place now, but that doesn't start until April 1st. And so by the end of next quarter, there will be. Kristy, do you have anything?
I don't know on that one.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Is there a different sick pay amount for an employee depending on which criteria they fall under?
Yes, there is. Let me see if I can flip through it. There's reasons for doing the sick leave, and a quarantine for a federal, state, or local quarantine. Health care provider advised the employee to self-quarantine, and the employee is experiencing symptoms. Those three get the higher amount, and then there's three more that get a lower amount. The higher amount being $511 per day with a max of $5,100, and then the lower amount's $200 per day with a $2,000 total.
Okay, here's one. HR 6201, and I'm so confused. Also about to read the governor's executive order about unemployment benefits. We don't know what's best for our employees or our business. If we have to temporarily reduce payroll, is it better to fire, lay off, or keep them and reduce their hours? And let me know if you want me to repeat that one.
Well, to me, that's just a business decision. I will tell you what we're doing with our company. We are trying to reduce people's hours so that we can keep them employed, so that we will have them when business starts back. And that's our business decision. We want that, because when when business starts back up, we want to still have them. And we feel like if we let them go, we're not going to have them when business starts back. But that's purely a business decision, in my opinion. And certainly, you other guys, you guys can tell me what you think, but that's what we're doing.
Thanks, Kristy. And just FYI, guys, Kristy had another call scheduled this morning. She's the HR representative on the call for today. Going back to, we answered a little bit about 1099 earlier, wanting to know how employees receive assistance during this time, or if we heard about anything for sole proprietors. But along that, because a lot of them have no income coming in, do you know if they'll qualify for any unemployment insurance if they are payrolled?
If they're a sole proprietor, they can't be on payroll.
Right.
And so they would not get unemployment. And I don't know of other assistance. Kristy?
I agree with that. I don't know of anything.
The next one would be, what kind of position do you think the state is in, if any, to help all of those of us that are unemployed during this time and not finding assistance?
It's a good guess at this point. It's going to be, I mean, I think our legislature is going to probably try to step up and fill in some of these gaps, but it's a guess at this point. But again, I would go back to what I said earlier. If you know someone in the legislature, please, please, please call them, talk to them, tell them what's going on so they know it.
Additional clarity around what businesses need to document and how does it affect their employees and their unemployment benefits. So during this time, what are you recommending that they document? If, and like, to what extent and how much detail about the benefits of the coronavirus? When seeking benefits for their business, what should they document?
The list, I would say the list of employees, why they left or were let go, or why their hours were reduced, and just keep a running history of it. And
Right.
You could do that even just as informally as on a legal pad, but have it so that you can read it later. And if somebody comes back and disagrees, then you have your backup there.
Is there any information that any of you have to share about FFA and small businesses? And if not, that's something we can find later. I know that might not be a panel specific question.
What were they talking about FFA? All I know FFA is Future Farmers of America, and I didn't think that's what they were talking about.
I'm thinking it's federal assistance, a form of federal assistance.
Okay.
But we'll look into that one. We'll make a note to check that one. Let's find out here. The SBA small business site has crashed so many times while trying to even consider getting a loan, we had to give up. What do you have any advice on this, or in reference to the SBA loans?
Yeah, don't give up. And I tried going online actually right before our webinar, and it's just slow as all get out. So just give it some time, but don't give up. I know there are a lot of lenders locally around here who are SBA partners, who are, I just got an email earlier from one of our clients who is, they were trying to get SBA. Don't give up, but try to even maybe call some of these providers first of the week and try to get in to see them.
The bill mentions loan forgiveness. Does that mean if I do get the loan, I won't have to pay it back?
I'm not certain that they've qualified that yet. I know when the hurricane relief that we got through SBA, there were some of those that were not required to be paid back. I don't know what they're going to do regarding this yet.
And I haven't seen anything either. I know the interest rates are a lot lower.
Yeah.
But that's all I know.
I've applied for the SBA disaster loan program, and I see where Facebook will be offering some kind of grant. Does anyone know of any other loan or grant opportunities at this time?
I have not heard of any.
I do not know.
And I don't either.
No, I don't know.
Thank you. We'll research that. The reimbursement for paid sick leave is applied as a credit to the employer portion of the SS taxes. Has there been any indication on how that will actually work? Is there currently any apparatus for taking credits on the federal 940? And then is there a different sick pay amount for an employee depending on which criteria they fall under?
Didn't we hit that one a minute ago?
We did.
Okay.
My apologies.
Don't make us think of it twice.
I'm trying to think of, this is why I was sitting outside. Let's look through the list of questions here that have come in.
You take one bite of THC treat, and then all of a sudden, oh,
What are the legal implications of temporarily reducing a salaried employee's salary if their workload has significantly dropped?
yo,
I don't think there's any legal ramifications necessarily. That and especially if the employee is acceptable to that. There's not going to be. I don't think there's any benefit, at least what I have seen so far in the federal legislation or the state, that's going to fill in that gap or help them. So I don't think that's going to. I don't think there's going to be any money coming in just because you reduce their salary. Elizabeth, you agree?
I do.
Has anyone heard anything about how long retail businesses will be allowed to remain open?
Aha, shut, everybody be quiet.
Sahara, do you mind muting yourself for us?
Do I mind what? Oh, I don't know.
She's okay. It's the dog.
And I want to change one of my answers. On the 941, there are some places to put adjustments, and I assume if they don't change the form, that's where you would adjust how much you owe. They'll send us instructions, though. Now, whether we can follow them or not is something else.
Section 139 about payments. Joining a little bit late, did we already cover that section fully? And I'll give you a minute to look that up because I'm not familiar with what section 139 is on the top of my head. This one's a good one though that, well, I'll come back to you, Elizabeth, because there's another tax question for you. My business is not life essential, but it's not a bar or restaurant. Can my employees be laid off under coronavirus?
Yes. While we're thinking about everybody, the restaurants and stuff having a harder time right now, that was meant for everyone, not just those folks. So if for some reason you were R&D in a small place, it would go for those people too.
Do I have to close my non-life essential business? I've been bombarded with messages and calls all day. Please advise. That one I can answer, no. The state has not issued a mandate for all closures yet. Let's go back to the, it says, the NC 5500, is that the correct form to fill out to waive the sales tax payment for businesses that is due today if you cannot pay it at this time?
I think you have an automatic extension because the first thing that came out from North Carolina said that any due dates basically in March, you could defer until April. And then they've changed that this morning so that even the 4/15 deadline, you can extend that to July 31st. I mean, July 15th. July 15th. And so I think the payment is in that too.
If we can, do you mind covering really quickly again, what jobs have to be guaranteed upon reopening?
I'm not real sure that the new law requires any particular job to be reinstated. Quite frankly, I think it's going to matter on what your business is doing, what the business need is. But if you terminate someone and that position reopens, as Elizabeth said, you have a 1 year period of having to go back to that employee to say, hey, look, that position is open. We'd like for you to come back. Give them the opportunity to do that. And they don't have to accept it. And you don't even have to. You have to figure out hopefully where they are. That makes some reasonable efforts to find them, but you don't actually have to do that. So I think the real reasonable thing is if you have to terminate an employee, then in reality, when you reopen, if that same job is there, then you probably need to, make that job offer back to that same employee. But in reality, it may not, that particular job may not even exist anymore.
Okay, sales tax penalties, the state has deferred penalties on late payment until April 15th. Any chance they will defer any further?
They did it this morning, and federal did it this morning. I don't know that state has followed that, but I assume they will. They normally do. They just are not fast enough.
I filed with my April 15th payment date. Do you think I can push it further if the state extends deadline?
Yes. Yes.
We figured out what the other initials was. FFA is the Families First Act.
Oh.
Is the HR 6201. Do you know how the SBA determines the amount approved for loans?
I don't.
If we cut employees' hours initially and then later or have to cut back on them further, are they able to refile for unemployment given the change in circumstance?
I would think yes. Elizabeth, you agree?
I do agree.
Should we apply for SBA prior to the federal government declaring what they have been approving? What has been approved? So should we apply for the SBA prior to the federal government declaring what they're going to approve in terms of assistance?
Yes, because it's a process. And I don't know about in this situation, but the SBA is not known for being quick.
Yeah.
And you don't always have to take it. They can approve you, and until they give you the money, you can say no.
And it's a long process. You're going to have your financial statements, tax returns. You're going to have a lot of documentation to give them. And I presume they are all out of the office as well, which I think will slow down the process. So if that's a viable option for you, I agree with Elizabeth. Go ahead and put your documents in and see what happens.
If you're a C Corp but small business owner and goes on unemployment as the employee hat, what are you allowed to do during that time under your owner hat?
Well, under the owner hat, you're an investor. And theoretically, you would not actively participate in the business, but that's not always followed. And I think we meant S Corp instead of C Corp on that. So if you're fixing to lose your investment, I say do whatever you have to do to keep it. But if you tell them you're unemployed, you still have to be unemployed.
Okay. What are the legal implications of temporarily reducing a salaried employee's salary if their workload has significantly dropped?
I don't think there's any legal significance to that. I mean, you can do that. North Carolina rules have said, as long as you say, for example, effective today, your salary is now going to be, say, $25,000 versus $50,000. You can't retroactively go backwards, but you can apply it as of today, make it in writing. And if they're okay with that, that is the employee, that's fine.
Has anyone heard if ABC Commission, and this might be something we need to ask John Simanskowitz, our ABC consultant, is if the 4/30 deadline to renew alcohol licenses has been extended. Has anyone heard of any information about that? We'll reach out to
No.
John then on that one. We'll get back to you on that one. So yes, the sales tax has been delayed. Status that we're getting a lot of questions on that. It is delayed. Okay.
Jennifer, can I just add one thing? When I talk about the salary reduction from a higher salary to a lower salary, if you're going to do that, I would say document it in there as well as to why you're doing that and tie it back to the coronavirus issues, just for safety purposes.
That's great. When an employee applies for unemployment, do they have to stop working completely, or can they simply work a reduced schedule?
They can tell, whatever they tell the ESC is what they need to follow. So if they say my hours have been cut back and so the ESC gives you this amount, then, and they'll ask you how much they've been reduced to. And then if you say you're not working at all, you're not working at all. I think there's a minimal amount you have to earn, or you can earn, but after that, you risk losing your unemployment.
In reference to the taxes today that should have been filed that's been delayed, do they still need to file today and just not make payment?
No, you can, right now with North Carolina, you can wait until April 30th. Okay.
I want to make sure, is there any idea on rent abatement from landlords? Is that something that there's any ideas on how to speak to the landlord for rent abatement?
I don't think the legislature or the Congress is going to deal with that because it's so individual. I don't know. I think that's going to be an individual negotiation. As I was coming in this morning, I realized how many houses there are between, we're off of Hillsborough Street, around the university that are now vacant. And of course, most of those are probably a 9-month rental or maybe a year rental. I would suggest calling your landlord, and they know what's going on, and explain it to them and see where you get to.
Does anyone have any information about an SBA loan process, about how the process actually works?
I haven't had to do one. I know there's a list of items that you need that is on the website, but past there, I'm not sure.
We'll send out that link to everyone too to make sure they've got it. And I did see yesterday there's a checklist on there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the SBA website, there is lots of question about physical damage. That might be some questions you guys can help answer. Can you tell more about the physical damage answer? Miller, is that something you've dealt with?
Repeat that question if you would, Jennifer.
When filling out the SBA EIDS application, it asks a lot of questions about physical damage. How do you answer that?
I haven't seen how it's asked. I think you just have to be honest about what kind of damage is there. Again, I'm not sure how it's asked, so I don't really know how to answer the question, but just fully explain, be honest about any damage that's around, and make them aware so it's not found out later.
And to add to what Miller was saying, I read something this morning that referenced that and still said that that even though it talked about the property damage, that the virus also qualified, that they just hadn't changed the forms.
Should they state by any chance any future losses, future revenue losses? Can they include that on the form?
I know they've told you that you can, on exactly what you can pay, and there's 2 different lists, and one says you can basically anything payroll related or employee related you can pay, and then the other one says that basically your operating expenses you can pay. So basically it says anything. It's wide open. We might need to clarify which was which though.
Okay. I know another one came in here. Trying to make sure we don't miss anybody's questions. I want to make sure we get as many as we can here. Are there any companies that you're aware of that exist in this area that can advise on how to fill out an SBA form, even if there's a fee involved? Sydney, we might have to do some research on that for you and get back to you on that. That's a really good question. And I assume if there is, they're probably bombarded right now, but we'll try and look and see what we can do on that one.
Jennifer, there are a couple things I noticed. You can call the Carolina Small Business Fund. They are located at their Raleigh office. They are not in the office. They're working remotely, but I know they do a lot of SBA lending. It's the Carolina Small Business Fund. And I'm not putting a plug in for a bank by any means when I say this, but I got this today by an email, and this is coming from Dogwood Bank, which is a local bank that's just gotten started up, and they're processing SBA loan documents now. So they're out trying to get business for it. And then there's probably a bunch of others. Just two that I know of.
Does physical damage include inventory losses, equipment that breaks for inattention, lack of daily use?
The first one, yes. I'm not sure how they treat the equipment for that you just haven't paid attention to.
Miller, have you had any of your clients asking this from an insurance perspective?
No, we haven't had that question. Thinking specifically about the something breaking for inattention or lack of use. I mean, that's a maintenance issue. That's not going to be covered on the insurance part of it. So that would just be a maintenance issue. But I have not had that question asked as far as looking for the SBA loans.
Okay. Someone just asked about, should I prepare to suspend hours or be forced to shut down? That'll come from the governor's office if they decide to do that. If and when they decide to do that, obviously we'll see it on widespread media, and it'll be posted on social media everywhere. And groups like ours will also help to communicate those mandates and help the best we can to guide you through those times. Mike, we'll try and do some research on that, just kind of on your comment to try and see what we can do, because correct, if businesses are sitting there stagnant right now, how do they keep up with their equipment?
Jennifer, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if we're not allowed to go to work, there are going to be some machines that are like that. From an insurance standpoint, all I can say is we have to wait and see how it comes out later. Insurance pays for losses that have occurred. So it's really hard in our industry to project what may be covered or what rules may be out there. We honestly just have to wait and see what happens, why it happened, and then what's available to us.
I know we've been doing this for 45 minutes now, and I want to make sure that we've gotten everybody. One, thank you, panelists. I just want to make sure that we give everybody a really good time if there's other questions. And I also, panel, I'm going to put you probably on the spot a little bit. If we can start with Miller. Miller, do you mind just sharing what are some questions or feedback that you're hearing the most of from clients, or any questions that you're hearing that we haven't really asked today or talked about, or advice that you can give to everyone?
The insurance industry, just like everybody else, is really following this closely, just because it is so new, and the insurance industry is very specific in their language and what's written on the policies and what's covered. So we have a lot of the same questions that everybody else has. The business interruption coverage that we addressed earlier is definitely going to be a big question. Liability insurance, if something comes up later that someone alleges that you didn't keep them safe from being infected, your liability insurance is there to help defend you in that respect. There are a lot of different aspects that we're still waiting to come out. I would just recommend, speaking with your insurance agent. I'll be glad to be a resource for anybody. But right now we're just at the very beginning of this situation. We just have to wait and see what comes out of it.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And I'm super impressed that you have no pollen on you sitting outside in the boat today.
I totally wish I was there, but one day I'll get back out there.
Thanks, Miller. All right, James, same question for you. Anything that you're hearing from a legal standpoint, or a lot of questions that you're getting from clients, or advice that you can give that we may or may not have covered?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of the questions we've gotten so far fall right within what we've addressed today. We also are getting a lot of questions or impact about what happens if I have to close my business and then restart it. Do you keep the same business entity, or do you start a new business entity? And I think all of those kinds of questions are so pertinent to individuals. It really depends on what's going on within your business, what kind of business that is. This is the suggestion I would make for everybody: is there is hope. And I will tell you, if you're watching news 6 hours, 5 hours a day, turn it off, get the facts, and then go back to business as best you can. I had a friend of mine who sent me a text a while back. He was saying, you know what, God has allowed us this opportunity to slow down some. Again, this is not how we want it, but at the same time, and I struggle with this myself, to smell the roses while you can. Even though, I mean, we can't change it, right? We can't make people come back to our businesses tomorrow like we'd like for it to be. So try to enjoy the time period as best you can. Make your business decisions, and you've got a wonderful panel of folks to call on to ask questions, because this is new for all of us.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you, James. Again, thank you for coming in and being on short notice and coming in and doing this and giving some great legal advice that I know would cost us hundreds if we had to go out and seek. Elizabeth, I know you've had a lot today about the financial implications and taxes and filings and, again, invaluable information. What else are you hearing, or anything else that you're currently dealing with that you can give advice, or things that we haven't addressed yet?
No, I think we've hit a wide selection of things. If folks want to see what's going on with pretty good explanation, that's real world explanation, not government speak, Forbes has great articles, and it's free to go on there and get them on their website. So if you're really interested, go there. And as far as hearing from folks, right now I'm hearing about taxes. I'm not hearing about 19 taxes. So I haven't gotten any about the other stuff, about the new legislation.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out. Thank you to the panelists, for all the participants, your great questions. Part of our commitment from what's next is we're going to take all these and help summarize them. We're also going to be able to put this video public so that it can be viewed if other small businesses have questions in our area. And if you have questions that you think of that we didn't address today, we're more than willing to share this with the panel to try and get those answers back. I know a couple of them we have some research to info on. And what we're also finding is that this is a daily changing topic, almost hourly changing. And so there's going to be a lot more questions that are going to come up. And a lot of it's about us just working together and finding the experts, if you will, or making some phone calls to find out solutions. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to email them to us. You can go through our website. I'm Jennifer at shoplocalraleigh.org. Sarah and I are here to help you. And we'll also be emailing out a big email today. We've been working our best on compiling a list of retail outlets that have online stores. So that if you're services based, or if you're, whatever it might be, so that we can share with people ways that you can shop from small business without having to go out. If there's credit card sales, if there are gift card sales, if you're running promotions, same with restaurants and food trucks. We're working on all of those, breweries. How is it that we can help support small business virtually? And so if you have not sent any of that information in yet, don't hesitate, send that to us as well. Again, it's Jennifer at shoplocalraleigh.org. Sarah and I will be adding all of that to these lists and the emails, getting that information out and sharing it to the public on how can we really keep business local, how can we keep our community strong, and how can we invest back in here so that not only can our small business community weather this storm, but also how can we come back stronger in the future. And again, we're here, as James said, be careful how much news you watch. It can be a little bit depressing, but we're here for you. Know that you're not alone in this, and we want to support you no matter what it is, how we can figure out ways to do it, even if it's just brainstorming ideas on how to market. So thank you for joining us. If you have any last minute questions, concerns, email us and look for some follow-up information coming out soon. And thank you, panel. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.